Hey guys, it's Music Tech Help Guy, and today I'm checking out the DANI wireless audio transmitter from Dillinger Labs and SKAA Wireless. Now, at first, this thing might look like sort of like a weird DI box sort of contraption, but it's actually a really cool sort of like Swiss Army knife pro audio transmitter. And in this video, I specifically want to talk about using this as a wireless headphone system for studio recordings. But before I get into that, let's talk about some of DANI's features, as well as a bit of background information about this as well. On the DANI transmitter, you have a USB-C port for charging the internal battery, a power button, which you can hold for 1 second, and it'll show you the battery life. DANI has its own internal battery that lasts 14 hours on a single charge, a master volume control, and an antenna. On the other side, you have left and right inputs, but because SKAA receivers can be set to stereo, left only, right only, or even some to mono, you don't actually have to use this in stereo if you don't want to. The inputs will receive either TS or TRS 1/4-inch connectors. Then there's also through outputs for both channels 1 and 2, so you can daisy chain this over to another DANI if you need even more receivers, or hook these up to additional wired speakers. You have individual -6 or -12 pads for each channel, as well as a setting to receive +4 pro audio line level signals or -10 consumer line level signals. Now, you might have seen Crossfader's review on this product where they used it as a pro audio wireless solution for DJs. Imagine hooking up your DJ rig or the output of a mixer to DANI, and then being able to transmit that audio over to 4 wireless speakers at 36 milliseconds of latency. You can ditch any and all signal cables or power cables once signal gets to DANI. So this is great if you're DJing a wedding or an event where you just need to play music for people, and having 36 milliseconds of latency is not really a problem. Now, if you need even lower latency for maybe like a live DJ performance or a live electronic music performance, or even using this for karaoke or even live sound reinforcement for a musical gig, you can actually cut the latency from 36 milliseconds down to 19 milliseconds using SKAA Pro. In SKAA Pro mode, you can send signal to 2 speakers at 19 milliseconds of latency. Now, I do have one of these $1,000 soundbox speakers, but I'm not a DJ, and I'm using this more for casual listening or if I have a party or something. But after hearing about the DANI transmitter, I thought to myself, what if I could use this as a professional headphone monitoring system for studio recordings? It's easy to record with wired headphones if you're standing right in front of your studio desk or your audio interface. But what if your musician's a little further away or maybe in a completely different room? You either need to run a really long cable from your audio interface over to the musician, or you have to set up a headphone Q mix in your DAW and then output the signal out of some of your additional outputs on your audio interface over to a headphone amp, and then the musician plugs into the headphone amp. That's also going to require a really long cable run. More wires, more cables for both signal and power, so there's a lot to set up there. And if you want a professional studio-grade headphone monitor system with personal mixers, like the Aviom system you see in a lot of pro studios, this will cost you around $2,000 to $3,000, depending on what system you get and how many personal mixers you want. The DANI is $200 US. But what about headphones? Can you hook headphones up to this thing? Well, you can. Headphones function just like any other SKAA receiver, just like a speaker. So you can actually hook up 2 pairs of headphones to the DANI for wireless headphone monitoring. These are the Dillinger HELIX headphones. They run for $189 US, and they're SKAA headphones, so they'll work with DANI just like any other SKAA speaker would. So the main question you probably have is latency going to be an issue here? You all know that you should turn your buffer size down when recording to minimize latency and pull it back up again when you're mixing to maximize processing power. SKAA Pro is an additional 19 milliseconds of latency that's going to be added onto your output latency for monitoring music, and then you can add your input latency on top of that as well. So if you're using a really low buffer, like 32 samples, basically we're talking about recording with 20 to 25 milliseconds of latency to monitor music, again, plus the input latency to monitor yourself playing or singing, as opposed to the typical 7 to 8 milliseconds round-trip latency you'd usually hear. And these things vary too, depending on what interface you're using, what sample rate you're running at. You probably all already know if you use a higher sample rate, your latency goes down. And also how you have your interface connected to your computer also matters. Is it USB-C, USB-A, is it Thunderbolt, is it old school Firewire? So there's a lot of different things that can vary the latency. Yeah, so I'm not really hearing any latency. I could play along with myself in the headphones. If there's a little latency, it's like I said, it's sort of right on the cusp of where I can notice it. So let's try this again, but I'll throw a click track in, and I'll throw a drum loop and some other instruments in to play with. Yeah, that's great. There's no noticeable latency whatsoever. I can play right along with the click track and the other instruments just like I could if I was using a wired setup. So in my tests using the HELIX and DANI for recording, 20-ish milliseconds has not been a problem for me at all. And honestly, using the HELIX headphones along with DANI is just about the easiest to set up and easiest to deal with headphone system for recording that I've ever used, because there's no wires, there's no cables. It's really simple to set up. With DANI and HELIX, all I have to do is set up a headphone Q mix in my DAW. So in Logic, I just create a send over to outputs 9 and 10. You can use whatever outputs you want on your interface. I just like to use 9 and 10 because these are the last pair of analog outputs on my interface. Then I connect those outputs to inputs 1 and 2 on my DANI. Here I'm doing this through my patch bay, but you can connect them directly if you like. Just make sure you're on +4 Pro audio line level for this. Or if your audio interface is smaller and it doesn't offer more than 2 outputs, you can buy a stereo to mono 1/4-inch cable and use the headphone output on the interface to connect to DANI. Just make sure you're on -10 consumer level for this. I make sure that DANI is turned on and the volume is up, turn on a pair of HELIX headphones, double-click the bond button to bond with DANI, and I'm all set. I might want to save DANI as a favorite transmitter. To do that, I'll just hold the bond button for 3 seconds, and you'll see that it turns green. Okay, so as one sort of final proof of concept, I'm going to track some vocals. Don't judge my singing too harshly here. I'm just kind of improving this as I go. So here it goes. You love me every day, just like the day when we first met. That kind of love to keep me satisfied. Hold me closer till the daylight comes. Don't let me drift away. Don't let me ever go. You've got that kind of love to keep me satisfied. Well, I clipped the mic a little bit, but I think you get the point. So that's how you can use DANI and HELIX, both powered by SKAA wireless technology, to set up a wireless headphone system for studio recording. No clunky boxes, no musicians messing up the cue mix, no wires, no cable runs. You can reduce clutter and simplify your recording setup, and the price for these is comparable to a good set of headphones and a good headphone amp. If you want to learn more about all things SKAA, you can head over to SKAA.com or SKAAstore.com. Don't forget, we're giving away one DANI transmitter as well as a pair of HELIX headphones. Check out the link in the video description below to learn more. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.